And so we will settle in to the Anapanasati Sutta. And after our chant, and I'll lead a simple meditation in that, and then we'll see what else the Buddha had to say at the end of the Anapanasati Sutta. And so our chanting friends, we chant the refuges, and you'll see me holding my hands like this, which is optional. It's a way of respecting or showing respect for the teachings, for the refuges. And the first refuge is refuge of the Buddha, our internal capacity for understanding and peace, that we remember. The refuge of the Dhamma, or the teachings, gratitude for that. And then refuge in the community or the Sangha, and we know how very supportive it is to be here together. We chanted Pali to honor the Asian roots of the practice. On page 3 here in the in-person room, and I think there's a chat a link in the chat for those online. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami, dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami, dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami, tatyampi buddham saranam gacchami, tatyampi dhammam saranam gacchami, tatyampi sangham saranam gacchami. It's always nice to feel into the silence after the chant, kind of ripples away. And so, friends, this Anapanasati Sutta, mindfulness of breathing, which we have been studying for the winter, has 4 preliminary practices and then 4 tetrads. And we repeat this every time just so that we really get it in our system, that we've got these 5 sets of skills really that we can call on, that we can settle into. And so I'll lead a guided meditation in the first 3, the preliminary practices, and then the calming of the body and the calming of the mind. And then we'll have time to practice together in silence. And so the preliminary practices are how we prepare for meditation. And the first is to notice that we turn into this quietude, into this seclusion, and really honor that. Really honor that we've taken this hour to offer ourselves this quiet, this inner journey. And we notice the posture, steady, balanced. This foundation of the feet and the hips, sturdy. And there can be a quiet pleasantness in that, just feeling that balance. And then the upper body upright and at ease, so leaning, letting yourself feel the awakeness and also the ease, so settling down into the hips or back into the chair or into that kind of sweet spot with the spine where it's kind of an easeful effort to stay upright. And there can be a quiet pleasantness here. Now we remember mindfulness intentionally. So we make the intention to be mindful. And also remember the qualities of mindfulness, this open, kind, curious attention. This absence of pressure, absence of having to do something right, absence of having to get something right. We're just meeting what's here with this kind, curious attention. And now into the first movement or first set of guidelines, anchoring the attention in the breath. And take a couple of deep breaths at the beginning. And letting the attention or letting the breath then just return to normal and natural. And sometimes a gentle note can just help stay curious about the breath. This mental note of in on the in breath, out on the out breath, and pause in that little pause at the end of the out breath, if there is one there. Noting in that pause can support the mind. It's often that the mind or the attention will move away during the pause because it seems like very little is happening. But if we pay attention there gently, gently, notice there can be some stillness there, sense of the body settling. We're just connecting for a while. And when the attention moves away to thinking, we know that's not a problem at all. It'll come back on its own. And when it does, we can kindly return to this in-breath, out-breath, and pause. And feel supportive to expand the attention a little bit to sense this whole body breathing, however that feels for you. Perhaps the chest and belly rising, sides of the body expanding, back of the body, shoulders rising and falling. This whole trunk of the body. Gently rising and falling in this gentle rhythm. Small calming in the body. So many small pleasantnesses, pleasantness of the calming. Inviting any small sense of contentment, just simple contentment to just be here now. Here, this pleasantness of the breath, the groundedness of the body, the ease in the body and the mind. And noticing without pushing or pulling or expecting. Whether this settling into calm and ease and simple pleasantness can support the mind to allow the thoughts, emotions to just come and go more easily. Letting go of struggling against them or trying to stop them, that all by itself can support a calming in the mind. Being connected with the breathing in and out, this pleasant breath, this whole body breathing. And just letting the body and the mind calm on their own. Just together for a while in silence. Any calming in the body? Noticing any calming in the mind? And so this Anapanasati, following the conclusion of the Anapanasati Sutta, or at the conclusion of the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha carried on after the instructions end to connect this practice of the Anapanasati with two other major practices. The practice of the foundations, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the 7 factors of awakening. The Anapanasati supports, evokes, leads to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And the 4 foundations of mindfulness evoke, lead to the 7 factors of awakening. And together, these they all support each other to support our capacity to calm, see clearly where we're holding on, where we can practice non-clinging. And a lot of practitioners, we all do. We say, well, wait a minute, how, there's so many lists. How do we make sense of all these lists? And so this is one way of making a bit more sense of these lists in terms of this gives us a bit of a bigger picture, a bigger view of how these lists go together. And so this is what I'll offer tonight. This is how the Buddha closed this sutta of the Anapanasati, the mindfulness of breathing. And so the mindfulness of breathing, as we know, has 4 tetrads, 4 verses, 4 movements, 4 sets of practices. And the first is the body, where we anchor, well, first the preliminaries, but then the body, where we anchor in the breath. And as we anchor, this supports the body to calm. And so this is the first tetrad of the Anapanasati Sutta that we've been practicing. And this corresponds with the first foundation of mindfulness, which is the mind, which is the foundation of the body. The very first place the Buddha directed us to pay attention, invited us to pay attention. And in the foundations of mindfulness, there are 21 exercises or 21 instructions on being mindful of the body. And I like the way Gil Fronsdal compares these two. He says, in some ways, we can think of the Anapanasati as the Coles Notes of the foundations of mindfulness. And so the Anapanasati in 16 steps, this quite concise teaching that we've spent the winter studying. As we practice it, it opens the door to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And so the second tetrad begins with sensing, feeling into the pleasant feeling tones of the body as it calms. So the pleasantness, the simple pleasantness of the calm body or the calm breath. And then a sense of contentment that can result from that kind of a softer, more subtle kind of happiness, this contentment at, yeah, it's pleasant to be here, and the mind settles in a little bit to being a little bit okay with being here. And then that helps us to allow some of the thoughts and emotions that can be moving in the mind. The mental activity helps us to be a little bit more steady with that mental activity and have a little bit of another place to place the attention and let that mental activity come and go a bit more easily. This supports the mind to calm. This is the second tetrad, the theme of which is calming the mind. Or the theme actually is more working skillfully with pleasant feeling tones. And when we say pleasant, when we say feeling tone, that means whether we experience something as pleasant. There are two other feeling tones as well, unpleasant and neither pleasant or unpleasant. And those are expanded on in the second foundation of mindfulness. And so the second foundation of mindfulness, the place that the Buddha invited us to pay attention secondly, is to this experience of feeling tone. And that every experience that rises has a pleasant feeling tone or an unpleasant feeling tone or neither, somewhere in between. And when it's not necessarily that it's not that every experience is either pleasant or unpleasant. It's that every experience has a feeling tone, because what we begin to learn with that is that the feeling tone isn't inherent in the experience. The wind for some people is pleasant. The wind for others is unpleasant. A warm wind for you on one day may be pleasant. A warm wind for you on another day may be unpleasant. It's not inherent in the experience. And so this begins to free the mind. And so free the mind from thinking that conditions have to be a certain way in order for us to be happy. And so this second tetrad in the Anapanasati works skillfully with pleasant feeling tones, really invites us, we don't have to push these away. We can use them skillfully. The pleasant feeling tone of calm body and the satisfaction, the contentment that can come from that can help calm the mind. And so that corresponds then to the second foundation of mindfulness, which also includes the other two feeling tones. And then the third tetrad in the Anapanasati looks more directly at the mind. And the mind, this receptive mind that can allow the thoughts and emotions to come and go, can have there can be a glad kind of deeper happiness with that capacity of the mind to just let those thoughts come and go, those emotions come and go, be receptive to them without being reactive. And this cultivates samadhi, concentration, gathering in the mind. So the third theme, the theme of the third tetrad in the Anapanasati is working with the mind to cultivate samadhi. So samadhi is the theme, overall theme, or the essential theme of the third tetrad, working with the mind to cultivate samadhi, gathering, concentration. And the third foundation of mindfulness is all about the mind, all about how these states can come and go. And there's a knowing quality in the mind that can know them without being reactive. So that third foundation of the mindfulness is all about how to cultivate that in the mind. And then the fourth foundation, or the fourth tetrad in the Anapanasati Sutta, is about liberation. That's the theme of that. With a calm mind from verse 3, we can look clearly at how things are. We can see that we're in a flow of experience, that in this kind of impermanent experience, this experience that keeps changing, that if we can relax into that, then we relax into nature, we can experience a little loosening of the sense of self, a little loosening of the sense of the controller, a little loosening of the sense of clinging. In the Anapanasati, that's the vocabulary of dispassion. We get a little less passionate about clinging, and then the clinging can ease, and we can experience liberation in the mind. That's the third or the fourth tetrad, is liberation. And then in the fourth foundation of mindfulness, again, that's expanded. And so the theme of liberation is the theme of the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And in that foundation, there are 5 major teachings that talk about liberation. 3 of these we know. I think we know them. I'm going to name them. In the fourth foundation of mindfulness, the first major teaching is the teaching on the hindrances, the challenging states of mind that can rise when we begin to meditate. And Buddha had his top 5, and we'll have our top 5. Those challenging, and restlessness and worry and sleepiness and doubt, those hindrances, and how to work with them is part of the wisdom of liberation. And then secondly, in that fourth foundation is the 7 factors of awakening, how to work with wholesome states, how to use wholesome states to support this freedom in the mind. And then the other major teaching in the fourth foundation is that one of the Four Noble Truths, and that's the teaching on clinging and non-clinging. That's the direct teaching on when we're tight, when we cling to something, this creates suffering. When we can release that clinging, we can have peace and more energy for action in the world. So these 3 teachings are in the liberation foundation, the fourth foundation of mindfulness. And so this is how the Anapanasati and the 4 foundations of mindfulness are connected. Each of the 4 movements are the same. They have the same focus. And then the purpose really is to cultivate calm, clear seeing, and the ability of the mind to release suffering. And then the Buddha goes on in the Anapanasati Sutta, then after he talks about this connection between the Anapanasati and the 4 foundations of mindfulness, he goes on to say, single out the importance of the 7 factors of awakening as the most important aspect of the 4th foundation of mindfulness. And he goes on to say how when we practice with the Anapanasati, these 7 factors naturally awaken. They naturally awaken just by themselves. So even in the first verse, the first tetrad of the Anapanasati, calming of the body, when we begin to pay attention, mindfulness is cultivated. That's the first factor of awakening. And then as we pay attention with mindfulness in the body, we begin to investigate just naturally. We begin to get interested and curious. This is the second factor of mindfulness: investigation, interest, curiosity. We settle into the breath and we begin to get curious and investigate. Oh, long breath, short breath. How does it feel with the whole body breathing? Is there a calming? That's all investigation. And as we investigate and are interested and curious, we begin to get engaged and a little bit connected. A little bit of energy can rise because we're getting a little curious. And this energy is the 3rd foundation, or the 3rd factor of awakening. And we can see this even in connection with the breath. That first tetrad, as we get curious about how this whole body breathing, we can begin to get more engaged with it, more connected over time. And then this energy, this engagement with what's happening can lead to a quiet joy, just the quiet joy of being in this present moment. Quiet joy of resting in the pleasant breath. Quiet joy of resting in this stable body. And this quiet joy calms the system in the 7 factors of awakening. That's the 5th factor. This calm leads to samadhi. the 6th factor, and then that leads to equanimity, the 7th factor. And so these 7 factors of awakening are all evoked, called up simply through paying attention to the very first tetrad, the very first instructions of being connected to the breath, the whole breath, and seeing the body calm. So all these factors are just naturally called forth. Nothing we need to do, for example, to create energy, except investigate. Nothing to do to create joy is be connected to this present moment, and there can be a quiet joy there. So in this way, the 7 factors of awakening are factors which just flow one from the other. And these 7 factors can carry us all the way, as the Buddha teachings say, all the way to liberation. And they can carry us all the way to liberation just in the first verse of the Anapanasati. We don't need to go any further. And so if the first verse, if that calming of the body is the place that you practice, that can carry you all the way to freedom. To this sense of calming, this sense of capacity to see clearly, and the capacity to see clearly where peace lies. These 7 factors can also carry us all the way through all 16 steps, but the teachings say that all of that can happen just from the first tetrad, the first exercise, the first instructions, that in this fathom-long body, there is enough practice for us to know peace, just liberation, just in this fathom-long body. One of the suttas in the Connected Discourses says, practitioners, just as the river Ganges slants, slopes, and inclines towards the east, so too a practitioner who develops and cultivates the 7 factors of awakening slants, slopes, and inclines towards Nibbana. Slants, slopes, and inclines toward freedom in the mind. A taste of freedom in the mind. And so one of the images that I find helpful for these 3 teachings is that of a braid. Now, the Anapanasati, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the 7 factors of awakening all braid together. And when they all braid together, they form a very strong rope, very strong sense of connection and rootedness in the practice. And then the other teaching that I really like, or the other image I really like that's helpful, and this helps me to have a big picture of the teachings, is an image that came to me one day when I was practicing by the side of the lake. And I was watching the ravens and the crows in the wind. And I was laying on the ground looking up, and I could see the crows and the ravens flying overhead, and they have big wings. And at the edges of the wings, you could see that they each have these little tiny feathers on their wings. So you move, they're soaring, but if they move their feathers just a little tiny bit, they change the trajectory of their flight. And there's a name for these feathers, but I don't know what they are. There's a name though. Someone told me once, I was sharing this image, and someone shared with me. So this is the image I have, and this is how I'm going to share how it brings all teachings together. And so the body of the bird is the first 3 tetrads, or the first 3 foundations. And so in the body of the bird, we have the body and the mind. The body and the mind, and the second tetrad of pleasantness. So just in the body, the basic body sense here are the first three tetrads. And then the heart is metta. So we want to do everything with kindness. So we got the body of the bird, and then the wings of the bird are the 7 factors of awakening. And so we have the energizing factors, one wing, and the calming factors on the other wing. And if you want to change the energy of your flight or change the trajectory of your meditation, you can bring up the energizing factors. So contemplate something joyful, something energetic, or you can bring up the calming factors by contemplating calm, whatever might be calming in your system, so you can balance the first, second, and third experience of the body, the heart, and the mind through these 7 factors. The winds that are coming at the bird are the hindrances. So the winds, all the challenges that come towards us. But if we practice well with the body and the foundation, or the factors of awakening with these wings, we can navigate the winds, the challenges that come towards us. And the Buddha talks a lot about the winds of the winds of challenge. We can navigate those so that we can have an experience of flying, of soaring, of ease in the midst of the wind. And this is the experience of the Four Noble Truths, or the non-clinging, that the spaciousness that we can feel in the mind, the heart, when we have that non-clinging experience. And then the larger teachings of the Eightfold Path, which are the whole environment. They're part of the Four Noble Truths, but also the whole environment that we live in, that we swim in, that we fly in, is the whole environment that the bird is flying through. So these, the Eightfold Path that gives us a way of walking in the world or being in the world. How to live in harmony, really, with nature, with our nature, with external nature. And so I think that the Buddha wanted us to have this bigger picture of the teachings. How these 3 lists, and actually when we combine all the lists in the 4th foundation, the hindrances, the factors of awakening, and the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, which are all in the 4th foundation of mindfulness in that liberation teaching, we can have this bigger sense of the practice. And it all starts with, or it can all, we can sense that it starts with this simple simplicity of the breath, this simplicity of the breath, this whole body breathing, moving, letting the body calm. And from there, the factors can unfold through the progression of the anapanasati, through the progression of the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. And so just resting for a while just now in this simplicity of this first tetrad of the anapanasati, letting this first instruction in a way be like the winds underneath the wings as we first start to fly, or the beginning of the beginning of the river of Ganges as it slopes and slants towards awakening, towards Nibbana, settling just into the simplicity of this body breathing. Nothing to do. Just supporting this body breathing, this body calming, and letting all of the teachings unfold from just the simplicity of this body breathing. And so this week, as we practice, as we move through our week, if you can find the moments, the times to just settle into the simplicity of this body breathing, knowing that just this simplicity is the beginning of the slant, the slope towards freedom. Can give an extra or an additional or a deeper sense of the significance of just this body breathing. This teaching of the mindfulness of breathing that can carry us all the way to freedom. May this calmness and simplicity support your heart this week and ripple out to be a cause and condition for freedom in the minds and hearts of all beings. Thank you, everybody, for your practice.